It's 10 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock.
Hello, everyone. How's everybody doing? I'm still, I guess, waiting for all the panelists to arrive. I'm Mark Kaufman, by the way. Hello, everyone. How's everybody doing? I can see people letting us know where you are, which is great. Kansas. I'm here in Vancouver in my basement. I assume people can hear me now. Let me know if you can hear me. And Florida, Quebec. New York City, Brazil. Welcome. Hang on a second. Let's see if we can get our rest of our participants to show up. Sorry for the disturb. A few technical issues here, but we'll get it sorted out and get everybody here on the call. Keep letting us know where you're from in the comments. That's great. I'm not sure why only my video is showing. It seems like our participants are there. Let's see if I can. We may just need to invite everybody again. Well, I must say, I don't know why we can't oh, I think Steve is showing up now, although we can't see his image.
Mute and mute. No, start video.
There we are.
Okay, yeah, you had to promote me to.
We can't hear you.
Oh, can't hear. All right, let's see.
Oh, yeah, we can. Yeah, we can.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Don't start video.
There we are.
Okay, yeah, you had to promote me to.
We can't hear you.
Oh, can't hear. All right.
Okay, we'll figure this out. New tools. Let's see. I'll now try and find Eric and Jahrine, but in the meantime, you can go ahead.
All right, should I then start?
Yeah.
There seems to be a bit of a delay, so you might get the echo of what I'm saying showing up in 30 seconds, but whatever. Let me just begin. I hope everyone can hear me. We're struggling a bit with the technology, but the purpose is to create a place where we can connect, because many of us are isolating. I'm self-isolating. Everyone else here in the LingQ team is self-isolating. So we thought it would be a good idea on a regular basis to communicate and talk about our favorite subject, which is language learning. Of course, we'll talk about LingQ more specifically, but we want to talk about everything that relates to language learning. And we have 4 panelists today, and we're going to go in the order that I see them on the screen. So I'm going to, yield the microphone to Mark. And so he's going to start this off, and then he's going to hand it over to Jahrine, and she will hand it over to Eric. Oh, the order has changed now. So it's up to Mark, however he wants to do it. And then I'll come back at the end and share with you some of my thoughts. So thank you for joining us. And I now hand it on to Mark, who is our CEO, Executive Commander-in-Chief at LingQ.
Thank you very much. Hopefully that doesn't encourage a slew of new feature suggestions. But yeah, thanks very much for joining us. As Steve said, we're all self-isolating, so what better thing to do than talk about languages? And what I thought, what we were thinking is that we could just show how we use LingQ, because that's a question that comes up a lot in support emails, on YouTube questions everywhere. So I think if we each spend 5 minutes showing how we use LingQ, and then people have a chance to ask questions, I think it might be interesting. So I will start. Right now I'm studying Japanese. What I thought I would do is show you how I import from Netflix, because I would say that most of the content that I'm studying now, I think essentially falls into 3 categories. I still use the mini stories and go back and forth between the mini stories and the other content that I'm using. And then I would say I use the Japanese LingQ podcast, because that's a good source of natural content, and because it's kind of casual conversation, the vocabulary level is not too difficult, and there are a lot of the words get repeated. It just seems to be easy conversation every once in a while, and you can see here on the page, well, for those of you who don't read Japanese, it's more difficult, but I also do some news articles. The news articles are by far the most vocabulary dense, lots of words that I'm looking up the whole time. So I definitely want to mix those in, or mix the not just the mini stories, but the Japanese LingQ, the casual podcast. I find great intermediate content. And then I am using some Netflix shows. So this item at the top, Samurai Gourmet, is a Netflix show. And so here is an episode that I haven't yet imported.
Are you sharing your screen? Because I don't see.
I should share my screen. Hang on a second. Let's just share this here. Okay. So hopefully you can, maybe it won't play if the, whoops. Oh. So this is a show on Netflix. It's not really showing the picture, I think, because of the, I'll pause that there, because of the webinar software isn't showing the picture, but that's okay. So I have this show on Netflix. I'm going to click our extension here. Change the language. Japanese. choose my course. Samurai Gourmet. Import that lesson. And then I can open that lesson, and then here I am looking at the lesson. This is kind of an interesting show. It's this retired Japanese guy that just retired, who basically every episode involves him somehow ending up at some kind of a traditional Japanese eatery with lots of close-ups of the different Japanese dishes, and the guy is so excited about every dish. It's actually kind of funny. And the dialogue is relatively simple too, so that it's you can move through it relatively easily. The show episodes are short, so I'm actually kind of enjoying it, even though it's kind of a weird show, but it's interesting. Anyway, so yeah, I just I think anyone who hasn't tried the Netflix import, I am enjoying it. I'm finding the Japanese. I'm doing Japanese now. The shows are a little different, which is to be expected, I guess. I did some Spanish shows before, which I found really good too. So I'm enjoying that. And then obviously using Link, if I'm using it, I tend to a lot of the time I would do it on my mobile, but here on the web, if I'm using the web, I use the keyboard. Make sure if you're using the web, keyboard shortcuts here, get to know them, because they make using the web version much better. And then otherwise, I tend to go for hints without a lot of extra garbage. Like I don't want the hiragana, I don't want long, I want short. So I'll take that middle one. Yeah, and so I'll just move through it like this. I tend to if I see a yellow word that I know, I'm gonna make it known so that I can get rid of my yellow words. And then essentially that's what I do. I go through, I don't do much review. I review just by seeing the yellow words in context and clicking on them. If I don't know what they mean, if I do know what they mean, I move them to known. So that gives you a bit of an idea. I think I'll stop there. If you have any questions about what I do, please post them now. Happy to answer them before we move on to Eric. And just to say, you can post questions here on Zoom, or you can post questions on YouTube. Somebody asked, am I able to see other members' Netflix uploaded content? The answer is no. Anything you import is for you only. Imports are private. The only time they're not private is if you deliberately share them, and there you are prompted to make sure that the content is copyright free and that you have, there are certain conditions that you need. Netflix content has no audio, so you couldn't share it even if you wanted to. That goes for any kind of content, books, Netflix, whatever. You can import anything you want. And that is a question that comes up quite a bit. You can import anything you want into your own account without worrying about copyright, because it's just for you. Somebody says, I don't know how to import Netflix. You just go to Netflix and make sure you install our browser extension. So we have a browser extension for Safari, Chrome, and Firefox. You would have seen me click on it just now. So you just have to go, you can actually find a link to all the browser extensions inside Link itself. I can show you that now, actually, just to make it easy. Here in the sidebar, you can find all of our extensions and all of our social media and mobile app links. I have trouble finding foreign language on Netflix. Yeah, I mean, I think Netflix has different titles in different markets. I think I don't know. Maybe someone else can suggest an easy way to find foreign language content. I feel like there's a foreign language section. I don't know, Eric. Is there or Steve? I don't know. I seem to just
I have had no
look
trouble.
around. You find it.
Well, I mean, I was finding Turkish and Arabic movies, so I can only assume that Italian, German, Chinese, Russian is going to be easier to find. I just, searched for them and I found them.
Yeah, I think so. You just search around, you'll find them, and sometimes you think they're not German because they're dubbed or whatever language, but you can just change the language. Like you can always hear the original language. You might have to play around with your settings. I imported one. It's hard when I imported one podcast, but I could only see it if I subscribed to it. I did that, but still couldn't access it. Yeah, I'm not sure what that means exactly. But if you, I'm not sure what that question is, to be honest. Yeah, any questions on YouTube?
Actually, maybe I could add, having had a lot of experience at importing and downloading and importing podcasts, there's a lot of playing around, and each podcast may be different and have different restrictions. And of course, without getting permission from the podcaster, you can't share it. But it's just a matter of trial and error. Some work and some don't.
And with regard to podcasts, rarely do you get the transcript and audio together. So sometimes you try to import the audio and then you have to go find the transcript. Maybe it's on a different page, or if it exists. Podcasts can be trickier when you're importing. Maybe it may take a little bit more effort and may take a little more searching to find podcasts that actually come with a transcript. Someone asked, can you import the whole episode if it's long? Yes, you can. If the episode's too long, it'll get split into parts. But there is a max length, but it has to be very long to exceed our maximum length, like hours. Okay.
Now, there was someone saying, show how to import from Netflix, but I see that Eric put up a link here. Here's how to import Netflix.
Plus,
Eric
Plus, I just did it. So if you can, this live stream will be available, so you can watch it again later. But that's exactly what I just showed 5 minutes ago here.
Okay.
Okay. Well, maybe with that, Eric, why don't you're up next?
All right. Can everyone hear me? Is everyone?
Oh yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. Let me see how I do this. Okay. So yeah, I'm also studying Japanese as well, and using some of the sources that Mark mentioned. I don't use Netflix. I don't really have an account on my computer, but there's a lot of other stuff that I've been looking at, and some of you might see the videos I've been posting on the LingQ YouTube channel. In case you haven't seen those, I would check them out after. Jahrine and I have been sharing our kind of guides on how we're learning French and Japanese. And we do episodes every week. So afterwards, I'll share a link. But I can share my screen here. So let's see here. I'm going to share my screen, and on desktop. All right, I guess my screen's being shared now. All right, I can only assume. Okay, so let me go to my LingQ account. Oh, and by the way, if you're still wondering about Netflix and how to import those shows into LingQ, there's a YouTube guide. You just search language learning with Netflix and LingQ. Okay, so. All right, so here's my LingQ account. And this is my Japanese LingQ content. So yeah, my lesson. So what I guess people are wondering what I've been studying. So let's start with YouTube. So with Link, you can import YouTube videos. Some of you probably know. And the trick is for me to find YouTube videos with captions, closed captions that are actually human made. So what I mean by that is, let me open this one. This is a video from a YouTuber, Miku Real Japanese. So I'm just going to open this one of these lessons. Just takes a little bit to load. Okay, so actually, if you see the YouTube video and you click closed captions, so let me open this YouTube video. Okay, so here's the video. And so what I'd look for is all videos that you import into Link have to have closed captioning because that's where the text come from. So if you click that, or you click the settings bar, you can see subtitles, and then you can see there's auto-generated, but if it doesn't have auto-generated beside it, you can just click the Japanese or the English, and you can see that the closed captionings follow the dialogue. Like, there's no mistakes. They're correct because Miku has put them in. And then you just click the import extension up here. And then you click import, and then you'll open it up in Link and you'll be able to go through it. So once you import it, it'll look like this. And then you can just go through it. So I've been going through videos for the last while, and they help because you get the audio and you get the transcript. So you get both, the best of both worlds. And reading and listening to this kind of content is a little bit different than reading books or news articles because it's actual native natural speech. So you get these little like nuances that you wouldn't pick up in an article, say. And then you can also, like, if you are going through the content, you can click on the audio here and play it. And you can also click on the speaker. So this is actually really cool because when you pull in the audio from YouTube or other sources, Link creates timestamps. So the audio should match most of the time. Sometimes it's a couple seconds off, but most of the time, this speaker icon, microphone icon, should match the sentence here. So they're laughing, but as you can see, you can match it from there. And this is in sentence mode. So you can only do that in sentence mode, which is this thing here. So I've been doing that with a bunch of YouTube channels. And as I mentioned in the Link YouTube channel, I go over some other YouTube channels that I've been importing into Link that have content and, natural closed captions. And then I'll quickly go over showing you other content. So I do the same with anime. This is from a website called Animelon, and you can import anime just as you would like with YouTube. You can do it with anime. There's no video in this case, but you still get the text and you still get the audio. So for those who know animelon.com and use Link, I definitely recommend trying to import content episodes, anime from there. And once again, this is sentence mode, and I can play the sentence as I'm reading the sentence as well. So it's really awesome because you're maximizing your input. You're getting the audio and you're getting the you're understanding how to read it. So that's probably in my opinion the best way to grow your vocabulary and your comprehension. And then also I've been doing lots of tutoring. So I'll just quickly show you this. Here are Japanese tutors, and I've been doing tons of lessons with Japanese tutors. If you want to book a tutor on Link, you have to just go to the tutor section, and it's only on desktop, not on the mobile. And you just pick a tutor here, choose a time. So let's say 30 minutes. And then you just look at the schedule and you pick a slot that you can do it. So you just click a shot, reserve time, book conversation. And then you'll get a confirmation from the tutor. So there you go. I have booked a new tutor, and you can see your bookings in the My Activities tab. And after that, they send you a report. So when they send you a report, you can import that report into LingQ. And as you can see, here are all my conversation reports with my tutors. I got tons. So there, and then it's like a lesson, but they just, they're based on the conversation you had. So super helpful. And that's pretty much it. So I've been focusing on lots of YouTube videos, lots of anime, and lots of speaking with tutors on LingQ to improve my Japanese. And as I mentioned on the YouTube channel, the LingQ YouTube channel, you can find a bunch of stuff that I've been doing as well. Here is an example. So this is what it looks like. I just made this video, but this is my mobile, the mobile version of my content on LingQ. So you can always check that out. I show you how to import on mobile and go through the lessons on mobile as well. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the rundown. There's obviously a lot more I can talk about, but I think those are the main points that I wanted to share. So I'll, let's see.
Okay, we got any questions?
Yeah, anyone have questions? Questions. Let me see if I can find some.
I see that someone's been trying to import Ultraviolet, a Polish detective show. When I hit import, it says no text found. One thing there, Netflix does, and really all video channels do seem to, or websites seem to change things periodically. So our extension periodically needs to be updated. There were some issues with Netflix, but if you're using the latest extension, they should be resolved. If you're still having, if you're sure you're using the latest version, whichever extension you're using, Chrome, Safari, or Firefox, if you're sure you're using the latest version and it's still not, you're still getting that error, then let us know and we'll take a look and figure out why that's happening and probably have to update the extension again. Someone's asking, Eric, do you still have your phone attached? Someone's asking how to import from mobile. That'd be a good thing to show. Okay,
let me share screen here. I don't have it attached, but I have a video, so I can just do it, showing that video. So.
Oh, then just link that video maybe if it's.
You did.
Showing a video.
Yeah, I did. I shared the video, so you can check that video. Yeah.
Someone, and maybe someone's asking, how about the kanji? How are you studying them? These are questions from YouTube.
Oh, sure.
And I think that was, yeah. How are you studying them, Eric?
I am reading, like there's basically almost two ways you can study kanji is through context or individual. And I'm kind of doing a bit like 70% in context. So just lots of reading. And then the other 30%, I might, do them individually by writing them by hand and doing like kind of a flashcard, but 75% I'm reading over and over and over again because I prefer to learn them in context.
And I would say the same, and because that question I think came up when I was speaking, but there was a time where I tried to learn the kanji on their own, and I did learn some, but now I don't do any dedicated kanji study at all. I just read and click on create links, and the words that matter and the characters that matter reoccur more frequently, and you just start to recognize them. And it's amazing actually how you just recognize them, even ones that you haven't seen in a while. Because I studied Japanese maybe 15 years ago, then didn't study it for 14 years, and then started again, and I was amazed at how some of the words I was able to remember. So I think it's just a matter of creating links and doing what we do. It's no different than learning words. You're learning kanji and words at the same time, and your brain will learn. I don't know if Steve has anything to add there.
Yeah, I was gonna get into that when I have my time slot, because I also had a question from someone who's learning Russian and asked if he can learn Russian grammar simply by listening and reading it. So I want to get into that whole subject, but I'll save that for when I speak.
Okay. Okay. There just were a few other questions I found in YouTube, so maybe we'll just go through them quickly before Jahrine can move on to her segment. Someone asked, what level do you need to be at to read news articles in a language? Steve, maybe you're...
I think you need to be at the, I mean, I like to divide it into 6 levels, call it the European framework, call it, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So intermediate, high intermediate, like level 2 intermediate. And that's why I was going to get into this, but what Mark mentioned and Eric, that where you have this more casual conversation type of content, it's not as vocabulary dense. And therefore it bridges from that beginner up to a level of, say, call it intermediate 2, where you can, happily read newspapers. I mean, you can fight your way through newspaper articles, but when there's 40%, 30% unknown words, it's tough. And I'll also caution you, newspapers are easier than literature. So newspapers are tougher than natural dialogues. So it's a matter of having a strategy so that you're with interesting content, but you're not creating too much pressure on yourself, fighting with a high percentage of new words.
There's another question here. Any plans for a UI revamp? I'll actually, yes, we do have plans. In fact, we have a major revamp underway right now on all platforms. So we're hoping to release it, within a couple months. Let's say we don't want to pin ourselves down to any timelines, but we are hoping. I mean, we're partially testing it now and building it out. So major changes coming, improvements coming. Yeah, yes. The answer is yes. And then someone else, which Steve touched on there. What is your approach when it comes to everyday language? More colloquial and less formal?
Well, maybe I could take 2. I see another question here as well. No, my approach in learning languages is to stay neutral, because colloquial language it's one thing to understand it, but to try to use it before you have a good sense of how it's used is very tricky. So you can be in a more formal situation and sound informal. So I am not that keen on learning slang and tremendously colloquial things when I start into a language. And then eventually, if I get enough exposure, I will start imitating those, that more colloquial way of speaking. Also, someone mentioned that they love grammar, and I'll get into that when I talk. If you love grammar, do grammar. So there's no, language learning is a personal journey, but I'll give you my personal journey and what I see as the role of grammar when I speak.
Any advice to study 2 languages at once?
I'll get onto that too.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay. So, yeah, I think that's good. Then maybe with that, Jahrine, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Awesome.
Can you hear me, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I'm currently studying French, and like Eric, I'm making a video each week on the LingQ channel. So you guys can check those out if you're also studying French and looking for content. I like to share the podcasts and TV shows and whatever else that I've found there. So I'll take you through. I'm bridging the kind of beginner to intermediate phase right now. So, I mean, I should be doing a lot of repetition with my studies, but I'm not. I just read what I like right now. I really do need to do more of that. But I guess I'm in a kind of a tricky spot because I can't freely listen without really reading the transcript of a podcast or a TV show. I'm using subtitles and don't understand a great deal, but enjoying it, and words and phrases are jumping out at me more and more, which is exciting. But yeah, so I'm very much a beginner, about to be hopefully intermediate soon. I've just got, I just hit the 4,000 words mark on Link. So why don't I share my screen? 1 second. You guys will have to let me know if you can see it. I'm gonna have to allow it. Hold on, sorry guys. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, so I'm in the library right now. The things I'm doing to motivate myself, because I am at that beginner phase, I definitely am motivated by the streak and the color of the apple, which I was just demotivated to red from silver, which I'm quite upset about. But it's because a lot of the listening that I've been doing lately has been through just watching TV shows on Netflix. So I don't get that time. I add the time to Link afterwards, but I don't I don't get the coins. So Apple isn't doing so well. It's not terrible, but it could be worse. But yeah, I haven't yet tried creating a lesson with a Netflix show transcript. I will do that soon. I just think maybe that'll be a bit difficult for me. So right now I'm just enjoying Zone Blanche and Le Chalet, 2 great French shows on Netflix. If you guys are looking for kind of spooky, mysterious thriller / horror shows, there's some great ones. Another thing I do to motivate myself is I'm part of the 90-day hardcore French challenge. So this one I started in January. So I'm actually it's about to finish, and you can see the targets there. I'm shy of the listening target. I still have some time, but that's always something I think as a beginner you struggle with, is to meet your listening targets. So I will fill that, but right now it's not looking so good. Also, in terms of what I'm studying right now, so I like to I have some podcasts that I enjoy. The Inner French podcast is one, and the Ballade podcast is another one. The Inner French podcast with Hugo is still running, and he's creating episodes weekly, and he has a YouTube channel. It's excellent content. This my other favorite podcast, the Ballade podcast, has finished, but we have 50 episodes in the Link library. So
Dareen, can I just say one thing? I noticed that Ballade there has 661 thumbs up or likes. That's often a good indication of how popular, how good a particular content item is. I always look for how many likes it's got.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. She's excellent, and she has such a lovely voice, and she's a half Swiss, half French woman. She takes you on trips she went on as a child, and still goes on. She lives in Switzerland and often visits France. So yeah, really interesting content. So yeah, podcasts, I try to do an episode a day, usually earlier on in the day. Then in the evening, I will read a news article or 2. What I do, I just go to the news feed, and I like to, I'm a little lazy. Maybe at night, you don't have so much energy, so I'll often just check out the article, and then if it's short, I will import it because I know I can get it done. If it's a longer article, I probably will not. I'll just find something a little shorter. So yeah, news articles at night, podcast episodes earlier on in the day, and then, as I said, I'm using Netflix. I have the subtitles on. It's not as good as listening on Link and having the transcript there for you to save the words and phrases, but as Steve always says, if you have the language around you, it becomes more comfortable. You start to hear more things start to jump out at you. I haven't learned another language yet. I know a little Japanese, but I never got conversational. So I wasn't really sure if that was true. I thought, well, maybe it's true for you, Steve, but is it really true for your average person? But yeah, actually, I've been finding definitely, I listen every day without fail, and I add words and phrases are jumping out at me. I repeat them when I hear them because I'm so happy that I actually heard them, and it doesn't just sound like a jumble of noise. So that's a really exciting development for me. But yeah, mostly for me, it's podcast episodes right now, trying to bridge that gap between beginner and intermediate. Some YouTube videos I found, and I mentioned these on my weekly YouTube video, I found lots of great YouTube videos in French with subtitles in French, so you can make lessons on LingQ, but they're just a little tough for me, and I get frustrated. So I have them ready to go, but I'm just trying to get to a place where I can comfortably watch and read along with them right now. So yeah, I think that's about it. I've started reading Le Petit Prince. I want to then, I think, read, Steve, your book in French, because I haven't actually read it in English yet. So I'm reading that one in French. I know it's in the library. And then from there, find an ebook, maybe like a book I've read before, Stephen King or something. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing on LingQ right now. If you guys have any questions, French learners, non-French learners, beginners like me who are trying to bridge that gap between beginner and intermediate.
There was a question here. Somebody, I learned German at GCSE, a UK school qualification. I love learning grammar, but I've been told grammar isn't all that helpful at the start. Am I an anomaly here?
So he did, sorry, so again, he did German GCSE and is now studying grammar.
Loved learning grammar.
I loved learning grammar.
But has been told that grammar isn't all that helpful. And I don't know, Steve, you can answer this question maybe too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe then I could just lead into my.
Or you can answer when you speak. We'll see if
speak.
there's any questions specific to Jahrine. But when you watch on Netflix, do you keep the subtitles on in English or French?
Oh, definitely English. If I had the subtitles, I just can't. I'm not anywhere near being able to do that, unfortunately. So
you have the subtitles on in English?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. I know.
Do you? I mean, it depends on your level very much. I think when I'm in Netflix, I try to have the captions on, so I try to read it first on LingQ, then I watch it with the captions on, so that I can make sure I understand what they're saying. I may not be 100% on the meaning, but I'm just trying to make sure I understand what they're saying, and hopefully, if I get lost, I go back to LingQ to review what they actually said. I think
sounds like a really good system way of doing it. Yeah, I'm a little lazy. It's my TV time, so I just throw it on.
Yeah, you can do both. I find if the captions are on, then I get very lazy with trying to understand the language. Sure. But everybody is different. I mean, you got to do how you do it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How do I improve my listening skills by using LingQ?
I mean,
just do lots of listening.
Just lots of listening. Yeah, exactly. Like it's just be consistent. I'm finding is the most important thing too. And like I say, I'm listening and reading subtitles in English. It's nowhere near as helpful as listening and reading along to the French or whichever.
Yeah, listening and reading along is really helpful at the beginning. If you can't understand what they're saying, listen while trying to read, and it makes a big difference. And then after a while, you just get better. But you need to listen a lot. Like listening for 5 minutes isn't enough. 30, 40 minutes every day. Spend 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes listening and reading along, and then go listen without reading along. And just over time, your brain will make sense of it. But most people simply don't do enough listening. Like that, if you listen to the dialogue one time and then don't do anything for the rest of the day, that's not enough. You need to listen a lot.
I find one thing I find helpful is I listen to a podcast episode while reading along, say words and phrases, and then I'll go off and do something in the car or wherever else and listen to it. Just listen to it. I find that really helpful because it's so fresh. Or you feel like you're progressing a lot because you just read it and listened, so you understand more than you would if you were to listen that night or the next day. So I found that very motivating. And then you listen twice instead of just listening once.
Yeah, I find that too, for sure. Here's a guy, I'm a native Spanish speaker who has trouble with different regional accents, mainly from the UK. Yeah, so do I. They have a lot of strange accents in the UK that take a while to get used to, even as a native speaker of English. Maybe if you're from the UK, you can understand them, Jahrine.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean,
better than me.
You grow up with all these accents, you understand that. But there are some people, still like some really strong Northern and Scottish accents. Wow. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe with that, Steve, why don't you give us take over?
Okay, before I share my screen, I thought I might touch on some of the things that came up. I see some of the questions here too. One that came earlier, one of our viewers here said, I'm trying to learn Russian, and will a Russian grammar just come to me just through a lot of input and reading? And this is kind of core to our whole method. Probably you'll want to look up, can you hear me? You look as if you're,
yeah.
So I find that the grammar sticks best when we're curious. So if we are given a grammar explanation about something that we haven't really noticed in the language yet, trying to explain things that are in the language, but we haven't experienced it, I find that difficult to absorb. On the other hand, if we have, through a lot of repetitive listening to simple material, like the mini stories, we've come across certain structures in the language, we are now curious, why does it work that way? And then of course we can look it up. We can Google verbs, nouns in Russian, adjectives. We can see the declension tables. We can look at them. We forget them. It doesn't matter. So I think the grammar, you will inevitably, through a lot of listening and reading, get a sense of the language, but you'll also be curious about certain things in the language. And at that time, I think it's a good idea. You may find that it's necessary to have a look at the grammar, even though if you don't remember what's written there. And then you go back to your listening and reading, and there's a gradual process whereby the brain gets used to how the language works. So that would be, one thing. And I also wanted to touch on this idea of natural speech dialogues, podcasts, and I'll show in my Persian some of the kind of natural dialogues that we're developing for Persian. This is good intermediate content to get you from, say, the mini stories with lots of repetition to more demanding, difficult content. It's not as dense in terms of vocabulary. It's casual, it's pleasant to listen to. So that's kind of as a general introduction. And now I will share my screen and show you what I am doing in Persian. So I'm assuming that you can see my screen now. Yep. And so bear in mind that I'm doing both Persian and Arabic. I was attempting Turkish at the same time, but I gave up on that because it's just too much. And this way I can focus in on the Persian and Arabic. They share essentially the same writing system. And it takes a long time to get used to a new writing system, even though you may know in theory how Hangul works, or how, the Cyrillic alphabet works, or the Greek alphabet, or the Arabic alphabet. For the brain actually to get used to reading things in that alphabet takes a long time. So I decided to focus all my reading on reading in the Arabic alphabet, which means Arabic and Persian. So if I look at my what I have in my lessons here, The mini stories has been my major emphasis, and it is surprising. I mean, not surprising, but when I started, these stories were just noise, struggling with a strange writing system, sounds that were just noise to me. And now I understand all 60 mini stories. But of course, I have listened to them 30 or 40 times. I've read it, I don't know how many times. And I occasionally go back there just as practice. And I'll just digress a bit. I had to do a Skype interview in Korean. To refresh my Korean, I went back to the mini stories in Korean. I went through all 60 mini stories. To me, the mini stories are a place for the beginner to get started, but it's also like a permanent work area, like a gym. So every so often you go back there, and it's the most common structures in the language. It's the most common verbs in the language. It ramps you up for speaking. It gives you momentum. And you can, and I personally find I am able to listen to them over and over again. There's something about them, I'm able to listen to them. And every time I listen, I discover something new. So that's all part of getting the brain used to the language. However, in terms of interest here, now I do have, as Eric pointed out, I have all my conversation reports going back to when I was doing a fair amount of talking online, because I had a 3-month sort of challenge in Persian, at the end of which I had to do a video in Persian. So if you want to speak, you have to speak a lot. So I was doing a lot of online lessons with tutors. They would typically, as with Eric, they send me a report, 15 or so words and phrases. They would record them for me. These become lessons. And I have now a historical record over a period of 3 months or longer of my various conversations with my tutor. And I occasionally go back there as well. Now, I have a collaborator in Iran, a lovely lady. I've never met her, but she's traveled in India, and she has all kinds of interesting stories that she tells. And as well as we had another group of people, but in particular, Sahra, she tells these stories, and then she creates these circling questions for each story. So the circling questions is like the questions we have in the mini stories, where essentially a statement is taken out of the main content, and and then, so she talks, for example, she described different scenery in Iran, and then she has circling questions. And so I find that very useful, because very often the main story is too difficult. If you get the circling questions, you get bits and pieces of the vocabulary, then I go back into the main story, and I find that I'm able to understand the main story better. Now, one other thing I would say with regard to comprehension, I recently did a video on listening comprehension questions. I'm very much opposed to listening comprehension questions, because if you listen to something or read it, if you understand nothing, of course, that's no good. You're not benefiting. But if you understand 40% or 50%, that's good. What matters is the 50% you understood, not the 50% you didn't understand. Because the 50% you understood is meaningful content, that is meaningful exposure, getting your brain used to the language. So to be asked a bunch of questions that demonstrate that you didn't understand 30, 40, 50%, to me is meaningless. You need to, and I will move on. When I understand 40, 50%, 60%, I move on to the next and the next and the next to get something new, because I can't keep on listening to the same story and not understanding the same parts of the story. After a while, I'm not doing anything. I'm better off, bearing in mind that I always mention Manfred Spitzer, repetition and novelty. You have to give your brain novelty. You can't just do repetition all the time. So to that extent, comprehension, don't be worried if you don't understand it all. Don't wait until you've totally nailed down one story. You're actually, you're slowing down your learning. You want to be expanding to other stuff where you will also only understand 50%. But eventually, that content that 3 months ago you only understood 50% of, you'll now be up to 70%, as if by magic, because a lot of those words and phrases, you will encounter them elsewhere. Also in my Persian learning, Sahra was also able to get permission from this Persian podcaster, who I gather is located in Norway. and puts out sort of summaries of various self-help books. Most of them are written in English. Sahara goes in, got permission for us to share them, goes in and divides them up into 6, 7, 8-minute segments, and then creates circling questions for each of these segments. So I point this out because it's an example of how today we are able to work with people all over the world to develop, you know, compelling content, but that is accessible or is made more accessible because we cut it into shorter segments, or because we create these, you know, circling questions and things of that nature. So I'm doing a lot of that kind of thing in Persian. I'm doing the same kind of thing in Arabic. I just received a segment from my Arabic collaborator who is in Morocco, and today I switched to Arabic. I think that's one thing. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the same things that other people do is it's kind of what I do. I do review, but only when I'm turning the page. And in Persian, typically, most of the time, particularly on the more difficult content, I will be in sentence mode all the time. So for those of you who aren't familiar with sentence mode is, it's much easier to work in sentence mode. You're getting one sentence at a time. In a lot of the languages, you get a translation. Persian is a tough language to be in because a lot of the normal services aren't available. With no text to speech. Translation is not, although there should be translation. I don't know why there isn't. At any rate, use sentence mode. It's tremendously powerful. And of course, when I do turn the page, got it, okay. When I do turn the page, I'm mostly on my iPad. Then I'll review when turning the page, but I won't go at, you know, thousands of words that I have to review them because it's simply too time consuming. And I do have this impression that when we review, in fact, you know what, maybe I'll just unshare, stop share. You know, there is this thing that, you know, we have the impression that we're learning, and yet, you know, it evaporates. So you can study our grammar, you know, declension table, and you think you've learned something, and the next day it's gone. So the same with with grammar rules, that's true. With reviewing vocabulary, that's true. So I tend just to rely on the fact that if I continue listening and reading, gradually more and more things will stick. And yeah, and certainly, you know, listening is so important. It creates momentum for everything. It's a core activity. Okay, that's basically what I had to say. Now, any questions?
Okay, I found some questions here.
Yeah.
A question for you all. I'm about to learn Russian, and before using LingQ, I want to start with Asimil books. What do you think about them?
Asimil is, you know, it varies from language to language. I've looked at them or used them in 4 or 5 languages. Russian is one of the better ones. I use Asimil primarily for the content. The content in the Russian Asimil is good. It's amusing. As in all Asimil books, it ramps up very quickly. So for the first 20 or 30 lessons, it's very easy. And then all of a sudden, they really pick up speed. It's content. I don't think, you know, it has a great reputation, but there are a lot of features there that I don't like. They don't give you the individual word meanings. They, you know, you have to kind of flip back and forth to the translation. What I have done in the past is, for Arabic and Persian, is to pay people to transcribe them so that I can get them into LingQ. You know, it's whatever you like. I mean, it's more expensive. Like Asimil is 3 times the price of Teach Yourself. It's essentially the same. It's a beginner book with some content and some grammar explanations. Not more than that, in my opinion.
Okay.
Someone asked, what are circling questions? Can I answer that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So if you have a story and in it says, the LingQ group had a webinar. Here's a statement out of the story. So that's a statement. So in your questions, you get the statement, the LingQ group had a webinar. Then there's a question. Did the link group go to dinner? And then the answer is no, the link group didn't go to dinner. They had a webinar. So you have 3 bites there: a statement, a question, and an answer. Most of the vocabulary and most of the structures repeat, except that it's in question form in one of the 3 cases. So what this does is it gives you much more repetition. In the mini stories, you're already getting 2 versions of the same story in different tense or different person. And then you add on these 3 circling questions. The questions are not about testing your comprehension. The questions are simply more concentrated exposure to vocabulary and structure. Those are circling questions.
Someone else asks, I think a bit of German grammar is inevitable. How else can you work out in die Küche and in der Küche?
Well, I can tell you, you can look at the declension table. You can think that you can remember it. And in my experience, 3 days later, you've forgotten it. At some point, it just, personally, like I gave up on trying to remember them. I speak German, it comes out. I don't know if it's in die Küche, in der Küche, but at some point, if you're with people and you hear the correct version more often, it'll gradually stick. It's the same as genders in French, where you get used to hearing, you know, une grande maison. So it's feminine because it's grande maison. You get used to these phrases. I find that, and so this level of getting used to the language and getting used to certain phrases and genders and case endings is a matter of a lot of listening and reading, so that the brain eventually gets used to it. It can be aided by looking at the table. At times you're curious or you're trying to remember, how did that work again? And very often the dictionaries enable you, you know, you have conjugating dictionaries and you got declension tables and you can always go there. But ultimately, you have to get used to it, in my experience, through lots of listening and reading.
And probably, like, if you get it wrong, people will understand you. And so you would like to speak perfectly, but I think we often say perfection is the enemy of language learning. Like,
right. And furthermore,
when you say, you're perfectly understandable.
And if you get now to the point where you have accumulated vocabulary, and someone said here that they were studying, I don't know whether it was Polish or German, and their teacher was very impressed with their vocabulary. And of course, this person, I can't find the comment, credited LingQ with that. If you build up your vocabulary to where you can start speaking to people and having meaningful conversations, you're going to tune in to how they're speaking. And you're going to tune in to them using these words correctly. So the more you can speak, the more you'll hear people speaking correctly, and the more you will gradually adjust your own use of the language to get it closer to the way the native speaker is speaking. To try to go in and ace that up front, maybe some people can do that. I'm not capable of doing that. And with my German as it is, it was only when I stopped trying to memorize these tables, where I got into more natural listening and reading, that my German picked up. I got, you know, I understood more, I enjoyed speaking more, I didn't worry about the declensions, and they gradually got better.
And I think if you do focus on the declensions early, it takes time, and that's all time that would be better spent listening and reading. I think that's the point. Like, you can spend time trying to perfect a tiny bit of German, or you can expose yourself to a massive amount of German, and then over time, your accuracy will get better and better. But your length of time to fluency or being able to speak and understand will be much shorter if you don't focus so much on this bits and pieces, but expose yourself to the massive amount of content that you need to expose yourself to help your brain learn. Another question here, is it important to maintain a streak as you get more advanced? Sometimes gathering new words every day seems to distract from other areas that need attention.
Well, I mean, I think the streak is motivating, but obviously different people have different circumstances. So the streak, what we count in the streak, is a bit arbitrary. So, but I find it motivating.
And I would say that the streak, at least the basic level of the streak, the 13 links, even if you're advanced, 13 links isn't that many. And so even if you're doing other things, speaking, yeah, I mean, you come across fewer unknown words, so it's harder to make links, but you're able to read much faster. So, you know, it does drive you to do more reading, which you need to do to continue to improve your language. So, you know, it's not just about creating the 13 links. In order to create the 13 links, it forces you to do all the other things that are good for you.
When I was had my challenge where I was doing Arabic, Persian, and Turkish, I was creating 100 links a day in each. And I didn't go to bed until I had created 100 in each. Okay. I eventually gave up my Turkish, and I'm no longer doing that. But I think it got me into it. Like it's just an obligation. It's a stick. It's a stick. It works.
There's a question here about interference when learning languages. So someone's learning Spanish and want to start learning French, how to avoid interference with the two languages?
Well, I don't know if I have learned related languages, obviously, Slavic languages, Romance languages. There is even, you know, crossover vocabulary between Arabic and Persian. It can be confusing at first, but as you get further and further into whichever language it is, you get less interference. So as long as you understand, as long as you're communicating, you're doing fine. And if you were to focus for whatever reason, they say you're doing Italian and Spanish, and then you go off to Spain or Italy, then you'll focus in on that language. But if when you switch from one to another, there's interference, I don't see that as a big problem.
Someone, where did that go? Sorry. Someone says, please don't get rid of the classic version. We have no plans to get rid of the classic version. There are fewer and fewer people using it, but we hope with our new version, we'll actually give you reasons to switch over to the new version. So, but yeah, we aren't going to remove the classic version. Someone else says, touchez pas le visage. Good advice. Good advice in these times.
It's so hard though.
I know. Do you think only reading could improve your speaking skills? Someone asks.
You know, reading and listening, especially listening, builds up your potential for speaking. The reading typically is better for acquiring vocabulary. I mean, they have to be done together, but the listening gets the language sort of playing in your brain and gets you to where you can start speaking. But you can't become a good speaker of the language without speaking. So there comes a point where you have to start speaking and eventually speaking a lot. If at that time you have good comprehension skills and a good vocabulary, your speaking skills will improve quickly. So you do also have to speak.
Okay, someone says, what's the word count to get into the intermediate stage for languages like Spanish and French? So we have some targets in mind. First of all, with regard to word count, if you are looking at the progress widget on Link, you can, I guess you can see every 3 months, basically, we are suggesting that you're moving up a level. So that if you look at the next, if you're a complete beginner and you look at your 3-month targets, those are the known words targets that we set for you to achieve beginner 2. And 6 months out, those targets show you what the known words level that you need to achieve to reach intermediate 1, and so on. So every 3 months, if you set that, if you set the time period on your statistics widget, it'll show you the known words targets for the next, at any rate, every 3 months is another level. So that could give you some idea, but maybe Steve, you can talk about it a little more.
Yeah, I mean, obviously anything that we say is going to be a little bit arbitrary. And depends on the language. Obviously, if you're going into Spanish from English, theoretically, you have about 50% of the vocabulary, which is more or less recognizable. because of the common roots. I tend to, I see the known words total as proof that I'm improving. Okay, I have 3,000 words, 5,000 words. I've got 11,000 words in Arabic, 4,000 words in Persian. All I know is I'm getting more and more known words. I don't really put any sort of objective value on that. What to me is the biggest indicator is I bring in a podcast in Arabic or Persian that's been transcribed. This is real, authentic content. 3 months ago, there were 30% unknown words, and now there's 15% unknown words. I look at my page, it's largely white, some blue, some yellow. So I find that this is the thing. Test yourself, bring something in from a newspaper, bring something in that's easier, see how many new words there are there for you. And I'm motivated by seeing, I'm continuously, happily surprised to see that there's just more and more white on my lesson page. So I'm guided more by that than some, probably quite arbitrary number as to what my, known words total should be in order to be able to read a newspaper. Grab a newspaper article, see how many unknown words there are. There's one here too. I've been a person who wants to improve their English. Do you have any suggestions for improving my fluency in speaking with proper Chinese grammar? I mean, I think first of all, I am not, as someone who has learned Chinese, I don't know a single Chinese grammar term. Chinese has a very practical approach to grammar. Words don't change. Word order is flexible. You pick up on how people speak and you try to imitate how they speak, and that's it. So I have no suggestions other than to continue a lot of listening and reading and speak every opportunity you get. And one other question here about the value of Esperanto as a lead into other languages. The advantage of Esperanto is that it's easy to learn. And I think particularly with children, it gives them the sense that they can learn languages. So it might encourage them to learn other languages. Ultimately, though, you want to focus on learning the language you're interested in. So if you are interested in Esperanto, learn it for that reason. If you are actually interested in learning French, then I would put all of my efforts into learning French and not spend however many months are necessary to learn Esperanto first. That's what I would do.
Okay. I had a question here. Someone's asking about Taiwanese or Mandarin with traditional characters. We do have that available, so I'm not sure if you're having problems downloading lessons. Maybe reach out to support, because you shouldn't be. It should be working fine.
I have some questions here, Mark. One is a person who was, have you seen that? A person raised in Finland, originally from Pakistan, who's working to improve his English, has a still child level of Finnish. What can you do? Well, it's the same. It makes no difference. Basically, we're all in the same position. We start either at a 0 level or a child level or, intermediate level. And it's just more listening and reading, very much the way LingQ is structured. Specific requirements for promoting a beta language to fully supported language. What is it, Mark? 60 mini stories?
60 mini story. Well, we essentially 60 mini stories. We launch the language, but we don't really have a fixed level anymore on what moves the language from beta to fully supported, but it needs a significant amount of content. So 60 mini stories launches the language as a beta language. But most of those less popular languages are likely not to come out of beta unless we get a volunteer member who really is able to generate or find or source, upload a lot of content to the point where it makes sense to move its status to supported. But fundamentally, there isn't much difference between beta and supported languages other than, of course, volume of content. Everything else is essentially the same.
Version. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, again, this question has come up, so I'll answer it again. Does copyright affect adding to LingQ? And the answer is no, if you're importing it just for yourself. Copyright's not a factor. You can import anything as long as you're not sharing it, and you have to deliberately share it, so not to worry about copyright. Another question, how do you balance time spent actually reading versus time spent looking up words? I feel like I spend my time looking up words and not following the story so much. As far as from my perspective, I mean, the more unknown words there are, the more chopped up your reading is, but that's why it's important to try and find content that doesn't have too high a percentage of unknown words. At the same time, even if you are interested in more difficult content and you study it, and it's slow progress at first, you know, after, you know, a month, you'll be amazed at how much faster your progress is. So you can stay with it if it's difficult, or you can try to find content with fewer unknown words. And again, you're trying to, it's chopped up. If you're, it's not as nice as reading in your native language, but you get better and better and better, and you just have to persevere. And the time spent looking up words is not wasted time. You're spending time with that word, all of which helps to eventually make it stick in your mind.
I should add too that the advantage of the mini stories is that the vocabulary repeats 5 times. So in the first version of the story, you're looking up a lot of words. That same story is told in a different tense or different person. It'll have much fewer new words. And when the questions are asked again, there'll be very few new words. So the mini stories, there's a good 3 months of content if you're starting in. And from there, look for content that has fewer new words in it. That's obviously makes the journey easier.
Someone else asks how to submit writing through the mobile app. You cannot submit writing through the mobile app. You can only do it on the website, either on the exchange for free, or you can actually pay to submit writing and have it corrected by a tutor. But that's, again, only on the website.
I see a question here about Ukrainian content. Of course, we have a fair amount of content for Ukrainian in our library, and I haven't looked for Ukrainian content in YouTube, but I would imagine there's quite a bit there. Again, I had to search. I have things that I found in Ukrainian, but I can't share. Audiobooks, ebooks. I'm sure there are movies. It's just a matter of looking for it and then using the Chrome or the whatever browser extension to import it into LingQ.
Someone says, should I read a book in my own language and then translate it into my target language in order to learn more vocabulary, or just in the target language? I mean, I would say read it in the target language. It depends on your level. I know that when I started, I read Harry Potter in Japanese. So when I started, I needed the English version in order to understand what was being said. But probably about a third of the way through the book, I stopped using the English version because my comprehension still wasn't perfect, but it was good enough, and it just delayed me more to read the English version. I had never read the English version otherwise. So for me, definitely at the beginning, I needed that English version to understand. But as soon as I could get away with not using it, I prefer to just stay with the Japanese. But again, it's up to you. I mean, depends how perfectly you need to understand it. But I found reading and listening and reviewing the words and kind of listening many times, I was able to understand well enough in the target language only. I don't know what others feel.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we shouldn't obsess with understanding everything. And even if we understand it imperfectly, that's okay. It's all exposure. The brain is getting used to the language.
Yeah, someone else asks about the streak again. Again, this idea that I don't want to create links every day because some days I just want to review. And yes, to some, and we talk about this stuff internally as well, because we want the streak to work for everybody. But in the end, we keep coming back to the fact that actually creating 13 links it shouldn't take that long. So if you've, and people have a bit of a tendency to want to create some links and then review them until they know them before creating new ones. And we do not want you to do that. We want you creating way more links than you can possibly review, because actually that's the fastest way to grow your vocabulary. Create links, read more. You'll see those words again if they matter. Don't obsess too much about going back over stuff, although you should reread previous lessons and click on your yellow words. But that idea that, you know what, spend 10, 15 minutes, create those 13 links, and then go review or do other things. But make sure every day you're pushing your level forward so that you'll achieve your goals faster. I don't know if anyone has any other questions, sees any others, or you know, we've been going for a while now.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it's
one thing I want to say, Mark.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the first of these sessions. We don't always have to go quite this long, but we would also like to have other people participate. This time it was the LingQ team. We would like to have other people, especially LingQ users, come on and talk about what they do, how they use the site. So if you want to apply, either, you know, send me a note on the YouTube channel or send a note to LingQ, or where would you recommend that they basically let us know if they want to participate?
Yeah, there's a forum thread for this event, so you can post there. I mean, anywhere you can you can find a post, we'll see it, and yeah, hopefully we can get a panel of LingQ users together and with Steve next time around, and we'll try to do this, I guess, every week while we're kind of in our lockdown period.
One thing I wanted to add to, you know, because so many people are locked down, it's very important to do two things, I think. To have a disciplined approach to your day and to engage in some meaningful activity on a regular basis. It's going to carry us through. And the second thing, to connect. So here we hope to achieve both those things, to encourage you and to encourage each other in our very positive, constructive activity of language learning, and at the same time to connect. So that's the purpose of these sessions, and hopefully we can have some different faces on the panel next week.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.